I will unmute all then. Hello, thank you so much for coming. I won't be doing very much talking. I think mostly Mohammed will, but he is representing an amazing partner of ours named Moken Group. I think he'll be doing like a workshop, so we will maybe have some time for questions at the end. But to just kind of introduce his group, Moken is a hub for founders and startups that guides them through the journey of like building a successful venture from like ideation to growth. They create diversified opportunities for startups and founders driving economic and social impact globally. And together, I think organizations have like the mission of like creating like a global startup ecosystem by working alongside teams, investors, entrepreneurs, founders, and startup program providers to support like the paving the way for success while connecting like vital pillars throughout the company's life cycle. There's probably a lot more I'm forgetting, but so Mohammed, feel free to like fill in. But that's pretty much it from me. Thank you so much again for coming. And if you want contact to, I think Moken Group afterward, there should be like a few ways to do that. Maybe Mohammed knows best, like the best ways like to reach the group. But yes, thank you so much again.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. That was a great introduction. Thank you guys for inviting me, and thank you for the time you're spending to listen to this. Ideally, I want this to be as interactive as possible so you can get the best value out of it. And I'll share my screen here to go over a few slides that I've prepared. Jessica, can you allow me to share? Oh, perfect. There it is. Thanks. Awesome. So, all right. So here's a high level of what I would like to cover today. First, I'd like to introduce myself and get everybody else introduced, just to get a feeling of the audience here. And then I will go over a few of the slides that we've prepared about product branding as well as growth for early stage startups. And finally, I'm leaving about 20 minutes to for questions and answers in the middle. And also, we'll have some questions, room for questions as we're presenting. So if anybody have any questions at any time, there will be time for it in the middle. So starting here, I would like to introduce myself and get to know you guys just to get aligned on who we are and why is everybody here and what value are you trying to get out of this workshop. Which workshop I think is the wrong word for it. It's 1 hour, so this will more likely be a short discussion. We're gonna try to cover as much possible in branding and product and growth. And to begin here, I prepared this format here to introduce myself. I'm Mohammed, one of the 2 founders at Moken. And just like Jessica said, we work with early stage startups and founders to help them and guide them through the journey of building a successful startup. There's a lot of pillars that we have at Moken that we assist startups with, but mainly it's from ideation and then building, and then we have such a strong focus on validation, and then finally growing and scaling the startup. I'm here because we have a commitment to provide value to our community, and we love working with early stage startups. And one of our biggest mandates at Moken is to help young entrepreneurs and students start their journeys and be able to build their startup successfully, and also to change the industry numbers when it comes to startups failing. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about most startups fail within the first 5 years. 95% of startups fail within 3 years. A lot of bad numbers there, discouraging. We want to change that. And there are steps that if you follow from the beginning all the way to growth, if you follow those steps, you will reduce the chances of failure. And instead of failing, you will be able to use any rejections or any indicators of failures to optimize your startup goals, to optimize the value proposition that you're providing and the solution that you're providing for whatever problem you're solving for. And eventually you will be able to make it. So I'm not sure how many people are here, but I think in 3 sentences, if each one can introduce themselves and tell me what they're building and why they're here. Let's start with Leah. Here, I'm going in the right order that I have on my Leah there. No, okay, we can go with Mortes Pale.
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much for being here, Mohammed. I'll start. So I'm Moritz. We are together with Carlo, who is also in the call. I'm building shoulder tab so companies can know what they know and index and connect their internal expertise. I'm here because I'm curious to hear more about brand building in general, to hear more about what Moken Group does and how it can help us since we won. That's the third thing. The first prize at the Harvard Undergrad Capital Partner. So we're looking forward to working with you on Shoulder Tap and see how you can help us build a brand.
Awesome, thanks, Mortis. Let's see, who want to go next? Laura, I have Laura here.
Yeah, I can go. Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm Laura.
Hi.
I am building REM, which is basically the Robinhood for donating. And our purpose is so that people can donate more easily and in a more fulfilling way. And yeah, I'm basically here because we're just trying to figure out how to market and brand ourselves better. So really excited to be here.
Awesome, thanks, Laura. I can't see all of the names, so if anybody want to go next, that's fine.
I can go. I'm Julia Montgomery, and I am building Capsula, and it allows people to centralize, curate, and contextualize their memories, and then share with their close friends and family. So it's a consumer app.
Awesome, thanks, Julia. Okay, here I have Carlo.
Hi, Mohammed. I'm Carlo. Moritz co-founder, along with two other guys who are right now not here, but are looking forward to meet you in our meeting next week regarding kicking off the partnership. At Shoulder Tap, as Moritz said, we're helping companies to index their internal expertise and make sure that that is used to the best advantage of the corporation, help people build an internal network, and really looking forward to hear what you have to say about sort of the brand aspect, because I don't think we've been especially mindful about that as a topic in itself yet in creating this venture thus far.
Awesome, thanks, Carlo. I have Isabel. I think we have Isabel here.
Oh, hello, I'm just listening in.
Oh, hi. Okay. I think since I can't see all of your names, and I'm sorry if I skip anybody, but if there's anyone else who would like to introduce themselves, this is a chance. Otherwise, I'm going to continue.
Hi,
All right.
I just got here. What exactly? I'm Kadeen. Our business is Ends Meet Market, and hi everyone.
Hi, Kadeen. Nice to meet you as well. Okay, so let's get started. Our general objectives for today is to figure out the approach for the real world branding fundamentals. We'll go over that, and then I would like to touch on why branding should be at the core of building a successful business. And then we will dive into some general approaches for product development and our process at Moken for product development, and finally in startup growth. So I would like to start by asking the question that a lot of people misuse and a lot of people don't really understand, and that is, what is a brand? And in order to understand what is a brand, I'm first going to start by asking, what do you guys think a brand is not? So if anybody want to go and tell me what a brand isn't.
It's not a logo.
Thank you. Actually, that's my first slide after that. It's not a logo. What else? All right. A brand is not a logo, as Carlo said. It's also not colors, and it's not visual guidelines. And believe it or not, it's not a story as well. A brand is a result. It's the result of all of the above. It's what others feel about you, what others feel about your product, and it's what your reputation. And basically, you're not building one brand, you're building thousands or potentially millions of brands, because those are the opinions of the people that are going to buy your product or use your product. So it's very, very important that you know what you are building. And here we're going to dive into some steps to build a proper brand and to use this across all the different aspects of building a business, including product development as well as in product growth. So that's the question here, is why branding should be at the core of building a startup. And to solve these questions, we first want to dive into the key aspects of figuring out a brand. Since brand is not a logo, then what exactly is a brand, and how can we create a brand for a business? And the process or the methodology that we normally follow at Moken starts with solving those three questions: why, who, and what. We believe that those are the core of building a business. If you want to start a company, you're definitely starting it because of a reason. You felt something, you have a purpose that you want to serve, and the impact and the importance of always reminding yourself, reminding your team of that purpose is very crucial and significant to the success of building the right product and marketing that product to the right people. So the first question that you need to ask yourself when creating a brand is, why are you building this? What purpose are you trying to serve? Why are you passionate about this? So make sure that you understand the exact reason why you're starting this in the first place. And then you'll be asking yourself, who are you building this for? And this is one of the most important aspects that a lot of businesses fail, because they're building something for the wrong target or marketing something for the wrong target. And finally, messaging to the wrong audience. So you want to be and if you want to message to the right audience, or if you want to have effective messaging, you have to know exactly who you are building your product for. Who are you trying to serve in your business? Who are you solving this problem for? Try to identify as much characteristics as for your audience as possible. Not just demographics, but also behaviors. What do they like? Where are they at? Everything. The more details about your audience, the more successful you will be into crafting a brand that captivates those users. Then you want to ask yourself the question of, what do you want to be recognized for? And as mentioned earlier, since a brand is a result, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for people who solve the problem for ride sharing? Do you want to be known for people who solve the problem for communication, solve the problem for remote work? So figure out what specific characteristics that you want to be recognized for among your audience. And finally, one more important question here to ask is, why would your target care? A lot of us in early stages, including myself included, when I first started building startups, I tend to unconsciously ignore this question. And most times I start building a company because I believe everybody will care about it. And I don't do the necessary steps to ensure that there are actually there's market demand for it, and there are actually other people other than me who care about the solution. So in order to do that successfully, you first want to list why you think your target would care, and then you got to implement that across your different validation points when you're building your startup, and go ask your target, interview as many people as you can in your target and figure out why do they care. And if they don't care, that's okay. Ask them what they would care about. That would be a sign for you to pivot or optimize whatever solution you're offering. So with all of that in mind, branding is a tool to create an effective and a successful brand. You research your purpose, you research your solution, you research your target, you use that to validate your business purpose. And then you use that, if your business is not validated, use that to pivot or optimize. And then as a result, you will have effective messaging that communicates your purpose to your audience. It communicates the value that you're bringing into your audience. And with all of that, you will be able to create a successful product strategy and a successful growth plan that will allow you to reduce the risk of things not working out. So in general, that's what we think branding is at Moken. And we believe that a lot of founders should definitely understand that it's not very complex. It's not something that's very expensive, that you have to design all those beautiful brand guidelines, all those beautiful colors. Instead, it's a lot deeper than that. The color is something else that just represents who you are. It's more like a symbol for people to remember you by. So it's really important to figure out why you're here, why and why should people care, and who are those people, and use that across everything else. We recommend figuring this out before doing anything else, because everything else is dependent on who you're building for. And it's a lot cheaper and faster to iterate in this stage compared to if you are figuring that out when your product is already launched. You figure out that, oh shit, you're marketing to the wrong people, or you've built the wrong product for the target market that you're trying to figure out. So work on this first thing. Once you know exactly the answer to those questions, you're able to move on to the next step. And that is my branding approach, or our branding approach at Moken. Open for any questions specifically about brand.
Hey, Mohammed, I don't know if you could hear me. Sorry, it's a little bit windy. But I was just wondering, how, what's a really good and cheap way to kind of discover your customer and make sure that you're, interviewing the right person, kind of, and A/B testing and iterating on a rapid fashion with a low cost?
Sure. A lot of low-cost options here to figure that out. The first one is try to do it yourself. So if you're able to figure that out yourself, then awesome. If you don't have the capacity and you're busy with a lot of other things, then you're able to look at different approaches, such as apprenticeships or interns. A lot of school students want to get experience to bridge the gap between school and real life. So sometimes you're able to work with those students in a beneficially mutual partnership, where they can work on your customer research and market research and validation at that stage. And my last tip here is, don't complicate it. You don't have to do it perfectly. It's as easy as sitting down for a few days, figuring out why, and trying to identify who those targets are, like by yourself, and do it at the best, like whatever you think is best at the time. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then as you move further along the business, keep revisiting this aspect and keep reiterating as you get more information about those questions. Does that answer your question, Rahul?
Yeah, so I was kind of like, I was talking about more like exactly which ways can we test it, I think like we were thinking about like Facebook ads, trying to test different messages, not like exactly like who would test it, but like how to run those tests very effectively and get a wide group of people and test which messages were good and access our target customer, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, that makes more sense. So the key word that you said here is your target customers, and you're trying. If you're doing Facebook ads, it's going to be more expensive if you're targeting more than what you need to. So the key here is figuring out the best who to use your product and narrowing that down as much as humanly possible, so it's cheaper. And then looking at where do they normally go, where do they exist, where do they hang out. So is this target more present on LinkedIn, or is it a TikTok target, or Could they be approachable in person? Maybe they're in a university. So if you figure out where you can find them, you will be able to reduce the cost because you're only targeting the people that you care about their opinions. You don't have to narrow them down very much, but you can narrow them down to a point where you have a targeted group that makes sense, and you're able to narrow that down more as you discover more data about their opinions about your product. The channels are limitless. You could, Facebook ads is one of them, building an email list. I really believe in strategic partnerships. So trying to find where do they exist in bulk and going after that as a partner. So if they're students, going after that university. If they go to a restaurant, then partner with that restaurant that your audience might be at, or maybe even the restaurant group. So that way you can target them in bulk.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you. I have a couple other questions, but I'll let everyone else go. Thank you.
We're open for 2 more questions.
I have a question. So this is kind of related to your last one, but what's the balance for finding your niche or target customer without excluding other potential customers? I know, at least for the startup I'm working on, our market is purposely broad and it's supposed to be like a product for everyone, but at the same time, you know, you need that niche to really hone in on your messaging and your approach to them.
Sure, that's a very good question. And what we do at Moken, we do an effort impact chart to figure that out. Are you familiar with the effort impact chart?
I've heard of it, but not super familiar.
Sure. So applying it to this, it's basically it's a scale of how much effort versus how much impact is each target going to take and give to the business. So you can lay out all of the possible targets for your business and try to identify how much work and how much money would it cost to go after each one of them, and how much impact are they gonna have on your business. And then from that, you're able to A/B test. So you can pick 2 targets that you believe will take least effort from you to go after and might have the highest impact, and then start testing and validating your product to them and measure. So let's say a cold calling approach or cold reach out approach, and you figure out that people from 25 to 35 who go to a specific, who are a part of a specific club, for example, are your best target to test. So what you do is you email or you call all of them, and then you start tracking, set some clear KPIs to measure that, and then watch the result. So if you're getting what you're looking for, then keep doing that and start testing other targets as well. If not, then switch completely to a different target.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Awesome. All right, one more question. All right, Rahul, did you want to ask another question?
Yeah. I know this is a little bit further ahead, but at the end, like a brand in perception is a little bit the design element, right? And how something feels, how the user flow towards the result essentially is designed, and if it's something that people want to engage with. From your perspective, how important are visuals and the stuff that a brand is not at the beginning of a startup journey for both like attracting investors, having nice looking pitch decks, but also just a visual sense that somehow attracts higher user retention numbers?
To answer your question, I want to ask you one question. What's the ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve with your whole business? Getting more users, more sales, more customers? What is it?
Yeah, I guess getting more customers and making more people happy using the product.
So the key word here is people, right? So it's all about people, actually. You're designing for people, you're solving a problem for people, whether they're individuals or they're a part of a corporation. So it's just all about people, right? Phone is ringing. So design and visuals are a tool to provide the best experience for those people and to get the result, to get the wanted result for them to think about you as a great experience brand, as a beautiful brand. In terms of investors, what investors care about the most is not the visuals, and I rarely see investors who care about the visuals. And by the way, I come from a design background, and I love design, and I love design-centered applications. But at the end, that is just a tool to get better experience, to get better retention, to get better usability. And if it's used with a purpose, it will have a great impact to achieve the result that you want. But if you're just doing it for the sake of looking beautiful, to get people to say, oh, that looks very beautiful, then you're not going to get as much from that brand as you think. And that's where like color psychology works. When you're branding for the target. Do they like animation versus real pictures? Do they respond more to a certain color? Is more intuitive versus something else for them? So the ultimate goal is to just give better experience and get people to say better things about you through design. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, interesting take. Thank you.
Problem. All right, so we're going to move forward here to our next part of the presentation, and that is building your product. Now you figured out your why and your who, and it's time to begin building that product, whether it's a tech product or it's a physical product. This will apply mostly to tech, but you can apply the same concepts to physical products as well. So we have two things that we really watch for at Moken when building a product. The first is building the right product, and the second is building the product right. And both are very, very different aspects. So building the right product is more on the product market fit. It's more about building a product that people will use. It's more about solving the right problem and shipping your solutions in the product in the right prioritization. So building the right product is not a one thing that you figure out before you build your product. It's a constant thing, and it becomes to figuring out the right features for your customers. And again, using the effort impact scale here is very helpful a lot to figure out what features of your solution are going to be more impactful to your customers. And that way you're able to prioritize those features first. And we also have another simpler model, and that's the must have, should have, and nice to have. So asking yourself what users really like, what must have features in my product do I need to solve that big purpose that you've discovered when you did your branding? And what your product should have if you have the right budget and if you have more time to build those. And then the nice to haves. And honestly, in the real world, you're lucky if you finish your must haves, because you're going to figure out a lot of things that are needed. And you're going to get into a rabbit hole chasing more features and trying to do more things. But at the end, trying to build as a minimum of a viable product, and actually we call it valuable product instead of viable, as possible is the right approach. And then comparing that to building the product right. So once you figured all that out, is making sure that you're partnered with the right teams, with the right designers and developers to actually bring that right product to life. And a lot can happen here. A lot of miscommunication in design. How do you actually how do designers can get your vision for that product to be able to build it right? And to cover that, I'm going to go over a high-level process that we use here at Moken to build the right product, and we can have some questions later around it. So our first step that we normally do is diving back into the problem and the solution, and to evaluate and prioritize the solutions available and the problem, to which one is more important to our targeted audience versus which one they would care the least about. And then we go back to our branding and identify our persona. Sometimes you discover more information in this step when you're doing it for the product specifically. So you might need to update your personas. And after that, you will be able to identify specific user goals that will be met with your product or will be translated into features or a process or a flow in your product. Then again, you do a solution validation. So you understood what goals here. You go back to your list of customers or users to validate again. Ruthless validation is super key to building successful startups. And a lot of startups fail specifically because they took validation lightly and they didn't validate enough, or validated at one point and then forgot to validate across every step. So in every step that you do, if there's a chance for you to validate that, and by validate, it's mostly talking to your buyers, the people who are going to pay money for your product, and bring them on as beta users or as just partners from the beginning, and offer them some great deals to when your product launches, just for their opinion. And finally, solution optimization. Based on their opinion, you're optimizing. The more opinions you get from people who are going to pay, the more ideas you can have that will help you tweak and tailor your solution to be sold easier and better. And that should be enough for us to normally go to the next process, which is building the product. It's super exciting. You know what you're building again. You start with the user goals that you've identified in the previous step, and then you map your flow against those goals. And you basically break down the number of users that you have. So let's say you have admins, you have user A and user B who will be using your product. And then you identify each goal and try to map out the journey. Like what do they need to do? Okay, log in, click here, click there, enter an email, figuring out the whole journey to the end. And then from that, you will be able to create user stories. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with user stories or not, but basically from a user perspective, like as a user, I want to be able to log in. I want to be able to create a password. I want to be able to turn my notifications off. I want to be able to send a message. And those are easiest when you create them as you're creating the user journey. You're going to end up with like tens or maybe hundreds of user stories, hopefully not hundreds. And then they're all over the place. So the next step that we normally do is bucket sorting. We sort those user stories under certain buckets. So for example, those related to emails and passwords are under authentication. Those are related to notifications under notifications, and then your features. 5 here is you prioritize those features again, and you do another step of validation, and then you'll be able to create your route to market roadmap for your product. And that's where you set the timelines for when you want to be launching your features. And at the end, you will have a screen list that you're able to give designers to create some low fidelity wireframes. You'll be able to take that, validate it again, and then hi-fi wireframes. You'll be able to do some usability testing, one more validation here. And then finally, you have a product that have high chances of succeeding because you've done all those validation steps. You know who, like it's for the right target. Then you create your product rollout plan. This is a meeting where you talk to your engineering teams to understanding when features can be rolled out. And then you basically start launching and shipping features. So this overall is the approach we take at Moken for building a product. Questions about this approach here? All right, I guess nobody have questions. Hey. Yeah.
Oh, Mohammed, when you're, I guess for the validation step, it makes more sense when you're beta testing, but when you're asking more implicit questions about like user behavior, how do you phrase them in a way such that you're not suggesting or putting any biases in the question to influence the answer?
That's a great question. And bias is it's very easy to get biased when you're asking questions to validate, and mostly um, because you don't want to hear the other the other way. So one way of doing it is having someone else other than yourself do it, and phrasing the questions in a format that allows you to just observe. And the way we normally do it is we know the goal and we list the goal after validating the goals, obviously. So you sit with a user or a bunch of users and tell them, hey, we want you to use those, for example, in wireframes, use those wireframes to create an account in our app, and then you just watch. So that way you just gave them a goal that they need to do, and then you're watching and just observing. And this is a little bit harder if you're actually validating the goals themselves. And it's hard for two reasons. One, sometimes people don't know what they really want, and this might give you the wrong data, and you might be building something that even people don't know that it's going to be beneficial for them. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes people don't know what they want, and you might just want to continue building what you're building even though people didn't care about it that much. But if you want to ask them questions about goals and about solutions, ask them about what frustrates them. So bring like your, for example, let's say training in restaurants. So if restaurant owners are having trouble training their staff, and it might be hard, and you're building a solution to solve that, for example. So just ask them, are they facing any problems when it comes to training? And keep the questions open-ended. So if they say yes, then ask them why, or what are those problems? And just ask them open-ended questions as much as possible. And don't try them to get don't try to ask them questions to get the answer that you're looking for. Instead, ask more general questions about the problem itself.
And so how could you do that with like, you know, different ways of messaging? Like, let's say you have multiple options for value propositions or messaging that you're trying to test out. How do you do that without presenting them the options, you know?
Sure. So you would test different people with different messaging. So same persona. Each persona I would ask, you would test one type of messaging. And when you ask them, let's say you have an offering, and then usually some of the questions that we ask is, would XYZ solve the problem that you're having with training, for example? And then you use your messaging in XYZ there. And then ask the exact same question, but different messaging to another similar persona.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, moving on. Now you've built your company, you've built your product, you knew who you're building it for. It's time to launch, or you're launching soon, and you want to make sure that you get your first customers, that you get your first users, and you're able to grow your startup. There's if you guys are familiar with the Valley of Death, this is where that normally is. You spent a lot of time building your product and a lot of time doing the steps before, and you've launched, and now things are not working the way that you want them to work, or you're not able to get your first customer. So what do you do? The first, if you followed the right steps in the beginning in terms of validation, this is going to be a little bit easier for you, because when you did the validation, you were able to build a list of interested parties. Those could be your early users. Those could be your first users. So those are your first, it's going to be easy to get your first customers. And if you've positioned that in a way where you are giving them a valuable deal that they're ready to pay for, then let's say your beta users or alpha users tested your product, gave you feedback, you've built the product based on their needs, and you gave them an offer that you'll give them 50% off for the first year. There you go. That's a valuable offer, especially if this product does solve that problem for them. So that way you got your first users with no problem. And then creating a strategy that does depend on the why and who and where and how. So those are the two things that you need to deliberately think about in your growth strategy, will help you tremendously build a successful growth strategy. Where is the channels that your people exist at? This again touches on the strategic partnerships. One of the top things that we believe have an impact on fast growth. Other methods that you can use early on are cold reach outs. That's totally fine. You know, building a community focused growth is one of the most successful as well. So build community, get out there, you know, talk about the problem, become an industry leader when it comes about the problem. Talk about it in a way that others can perceive you as expert in that matter. And don't just hide out there and just wait for people to use your product. And don't focus heavily on digital and paid ads. Those have become a lot less effective during the last few years, and they're very, very expensive. And those should be your least focus. Instead, try to focus on organic growth. I'm going to touch on a few strategies here that we do to create the right growth strategy. So first, again, your question is the why. Why would someone give attention? Use that again. Revisit your branding components and try to identify any friction points that people might have to use your product and try to eliminate those. Whether using messaging, the right messaging could reduce friction, features, design, use all of the tools possible to get more people to be able to start using your product and care more about it. Going back to your who are those who are going to pay for your product, and then where can you find them? And how are you going to get their attention? It depends from a case to case. Each startup is unique in terms of how you're able to get their attention. And this is where it's a B2B strategy versus a B2C strategy versus any other type of unique target strategy. You just want to think about the easiest way for you to get them to just start paying for your product and have that in your strategy. And here's some tips to get early traction for your startup. So first, set clear goals for if it's a cold calls, like a number of calls that you want to have per week to reach out. And I don't think, like when I say cold calls, those are not the cold calls that you're thinking about that you get sometimes, those annoying calls, someone's trying to sell you something. Instead, those are just reach outs to people that you've never met before. Build rapport, take the time to get to know them, take the time to build a relationship with them. At the end, it's all about relationships. But set a clear number of a number of calls that you want to have a week or a month, number of meetings, the number of events that you want to attend, and try to reach those goals. Leverage your validation and pre-launch phases. Use the list that you got from those phases to bring them on as your first customers. Those are the easiest to convert, as mentioned. They already know about you. They already know that you've kept them in the loop building this. It's okay to do non-scalable activities in early stages. Don't worry about doing the things that only can be automated. So it's okay to reach out to some press, do events, run events. At this stage, you want to get as many users as possible. And at some point, you will be able to generate enough revenue to be able to either raise capital. Yep.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so you'll be able to generate some revenue or traction that is that could help you reach your next goal. It's important to know what you're building or growing your company for, because if you are building a company to just generate revenue and just for exponential growth, then that could be one thing versus building something that could meet investors' criteria. So make sure that you understand what you're building as early as possible and who you are building it for in terms of either just getting revenue or getting investors' interest. Because if you want to build or to get to a point where you're able to just raise capital, then you need to take some additional steps as early as possible in terms of building relationships with those investors. You're almost selling to a whole other target from the beginning and keeping them updated, sharing your goals with them, and then sharing those goals to your investors and setting goals that you can meet. So an example here, let's say that you want to reach 1,000 users in a year and you're raising after a year and a half. So keeping your investors in the loop in the middle that, hey, you're meeting your goals, you're exceeding your goals month to month, will get them more interested. And thinking about that step as early in the process as possible will put you in a position where you're less desperate and they are more interested in investing in you as a startup. Versus coming to the step where you're just scrambling, you have like 2 months runway for your product and you really need the money. Most likely it's going to be very, very difficult to get that money at that stage, unless you've built those relationships early on and you've generated some interest from the beginning and all you're doing is just keeping them updated. Finally here, exponential growth. Strategic, thinking about where can you have exponential growth. Strategic partnerships is one thing, but the other is product-led growth and growth engines within the product themselves. This is something that you should think about when you're building your product as well. And sometimes it's very easy to just have a referral system in your product where you're incentivizing people to talk more about your product and get some organic word of mouth growth. So a very good example here that Dropbox did very early on is for every user that you invite, you get 2 gigabytes added to your storage. So a lot of people wanted to get more gigabytes because they only offered you, I think when they started, like 2 gigabytes to start with. So people were able to rack up to like 50 gigabytes of free storage with Dropbox early on just by inviting others. And the ripple effect there was crazy. Dropbox was able to grow exponentially just by implementing that without doing a lot of work and without paying a lot of money to get that done. There are a lot of other product-led growth strategies you can implement as well. And at the end here, if you're building an amazing product, you validated it, you tested it, your chances are going to be a lot higher. And always test, measure, optimize, and repeat, and iterate as fast as you can throughout the whole process. And that was the end. So open for any questions or discussions.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. I think this group honestly moderates itself to some extent, so feel free to like unmute or speak up whenever you want.
All right.
I have a quick question. Have you had experience with startups conducting successful pre-sales? And if so, what have they done that makes that effective versus, not?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, and we believe that pre-sales is one of the most effective ways to validate your company. And if there's any slight chance that you could do a pre-sale before you build your product, then you're on a path for success. What to do in order to ensure a successful pre-sale campaign, for example, is gonna depend from one product to another. And it's mostly about the requirements that are needed to make that sale. So sometimes it's just a promise on paper. Sometimes it's a product prototype, So if you're able to create a small prototype that can communicate the value to your targeted customers, then they're more likely to buy. And I recommend understanding those requirements and then setting them as a goal rather than building the whole thing. So your first goal is to create all the material needed, your effective messaging needed, your landing page possibly, and whatever you need in place to be able to close those pre-sales. Don't focus on building the whole thing. Don't focus on anything else.
Well, can I ask a quick follow-up to that? And then what avenues to explore to get those pre-sales. You mentioned how social media ads aren't always the most effective. And we do have, like, we're in development for our beta, so we do have, like, actual product to show off and the functionality. So, like, how do you find those people willing to, pay before it's ready?
Who's your target? Is it companies or people?
People.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about those people.
Yeah, so primarily we're looking at families or family units who have purchased it, for their family, and it's a subscription-based app, and it allows them to connect with their close friends and family, and also to centralize their own memories.
Have you identified possible personas there that you want to target?
Yes, most likely the purchasing customer will be like the moms in the family, and then the whole family will be the users of it.
Okay. Now those moms, do they work? Are they parts of any clubs? Are they active in social? Are they active on other things?
Active on social and more, yes, working or used to work, and then like millennials or younger as the initial target.
Okay, so first step, start with people in your network who meet that criteria. Then get your network to recommend or refer you to people in their network that they know about. And then start from there. So you would be surprised how much people you have in your network, on your like second degree network or third degree network. If you exhaust all of that 100%, then just start cold reaching out, build relationships, tell them that you're interested in hearing about them and about the problems that they might have, and you're not trying to sell them. Don't go with the purpose of selling them at all. Instead, go with the purpose of building a relationship with them, like a true, legit, genuine relationship with them, and then take it from there.
Thank you.
No problem. Any more questions?
Mohammed, can we get this slideshow? This is
absolutely. So
nice.
Yeah, I'll show you guys how to reach out to us before ending this, and I will send this slideshow to, I'm not sure if I have everybody's email, but I'll definitely send it to Melissa, who can send it to all of you guys.
Thank you. And
No
could you tell us
problem.
more about how the Moken like group works? Like, how do you guys work with early stage startups, and is there any what are some of the criteria, and how do you choose who you would like to work with?
So we work with startups in a variety of methods, actually, and it does depend on their specific needs. So some startups need support in product, some startups need support in growth, some validation, some in all areas, and it honestly depends. So let's say your need is let's say you need support in everything. So at first we talk with you, we build a relationship, and we see the areas that you're really strong at and the areas that you have gaps in your startup and you need potential support. And then we try to identify the levels of support and involvement needed from us. So if it's just an advice, then you just join our network and we just ask us questions anytime, and then we'll give you advice as much as possible. If it's introductions or connections, then we have Moken events and Moken network, where we can connect you with anyone who's an expert in their matter and get you started there. If it's execution and strategy, then we integrate with your team to kind of execute those strategies or design and create the strategies, depending on which area you need. And if your need is capital raising, we work with you on depending on the level of involvement, again, to make sure that you have the right strategy to raise funds and utilize and leverage your own connections and your own network first, as well as your own capacity. So we try to get you to exhaust everything that you can do by yourself, and then fill in the gaps for everything else.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like mentorship and stuff like that.
So it could be mentorship, it could be just resources, it could be guidance, and it could go all the way to some startups that we work with. We're basically building all of their product and doing all of their growth. So like
Oh,
we have
interesting.
teams dedicated to do everything for them, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, it does depend on the exact specific need that you have at the stage you're in. Any other questions?
Oh, and in terms of like social media campaigns, like, is there any way to kind of like, I guess I know some founders are very like active on like Twitter and stuff like that and from their own personal account. Is there any, do you have any opinion on that, or in terms of like raising sentiment and creating a community?
Oh, 100%. I believe that that's very impactful. It doesn't matter where it is. Social media is just one of the channels. You could be popular in podcasts and audio. You know, it's just whatever
Gotcha.
your target customers are at. But building a personal brand feeds into your product a lot, and it's very, very important that you do that and talk about the problem that you're solving so people can perceive you as someone who's a leader in that specific problem, and that will create a lot of trust, and you will be able to send those people to buy your product later on indirectly and very organically. So yeah, I believe that this is something that you should consider, definitely.
Okay.
It's just hard to find the time for it, you know, when you're early stage. Yeah.
It's okay. It's fun, but in terms of like notoriety, you know, sometimes online you could get like canceled or something like that. Is there any like backlash to that, you know, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, those are some of the risks. I think the best way to navigate that is by anticipating that and putting yourself in a position where you can predict that as much as possible. One of the things that we do is just try to anticipate what could go wrong when you start, you know, everything that could go wrong, and figure out a way to avoid it. Maybe it's a topic that you shouldn't be talking about, so just don't talk about it in the first place, and have a plan and have a contingency upon contingency to, if something happens, what's your reaction? So proper planning prior to can help you avoid or reduce the chances of those happening.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you so much, Mohammed. This was awesome.
No problem. Thanks for the questions, Raul. All are great questions. All right, we're at the end here. Is one final question. If anybody have any final questions. All right, thank you all for coming. Back to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much. That's pretty much it from us, Mohammed. This will probably be turned into a podcast, like I said before, and we will run the final draft like by you, so like you can have any say in like editing. But thank you so much for doing this again, for like sponsoring like IF packages. Like that's truly like I don't even have the words to thank you for it, but thank you so much again for all of you guys for attending. I hope you've been enjoying the programming so far.
Awesome, thank you. And we love giving back to the community, and we're very happy and excited to work with you all, guys, and talk with you. So, and feel free to reach out to any of us anytime. I will send the slideshow as well as our LinkedIn accounts. Feel free to connect with us there. And yeah, well, hopefully I'll talk to you guys sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. You've been so generous, and we really do appreciate it.
Oh, Melissa, you're here. Thank you.
I am here. Sorry.
No worries.
Great. I'll just end the recording, and then we can kind of chat offline.